We're talking trade rumors on these 5 guys on today's show, plus maybe one more you might sneak in there. Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and Jerry Jeudy. Not necessarily in that order, so make sure you watch the entirety of today's show. And the NFL trade deadline is 1 week away. We will have tons of rumors and news, everything else in between coverage for you on the NFL trade deadline. Some big names on the block, apparently. If you want updates, simply subscribe. It is free right here on Chat Sports. Let's begin with Derrick Henry and the Titans overall. They made the somewhat surprising but big-time trade to ship out Kevin Byard, get Terrell Edmonds, who's not that great, and some day 3 draft capital. And for a team that is not that good this year, despite the best efforts from a very good head coach in Mike Vrabel, and despite, still kind of being alive in the race, their quarterback's hurt. We'll see how Will Levis and Malik Willis both those guys play. The fire sale rumors are here, and that includes Derrick Henry somewhat significantly. Now, he is in the last year of his contract. In total, is due $10.5 million so far this season. Now, you wouldn't owe him everything from that perspective. It'd be the prorated amount, which comes in just under $6 million. It's around half, a little bit more than half for the quick, easy math there for you guys. It's around $6 million, though. And if the Titans are going to rebuild, if they're going to not compete this year, Henry's in the last year of his deal. I think you should trade him. I really do. We'll get to some team ideas in a little bit. I do want to mention this part, too. Derrick Henry is not King Henry anymore. I'm sorry. There's still flashes of it, and the O-line in Tennessee is not very good. That's a fair factor. We now have 3 years of sample size that shows Derrick Henry is about a 4.4 yard per carry player. That's not bad. That's still actually pretty good relative to most in the NFL. But his rush yards over expectation are down again this year relative to his peak years. He's the Derrick Henry contract, by the way, is like the one running back contract that's actually worked out. They're trading him because they're bad, not because he sucks or is going to get cut. It might just be time for Derrick Henry to move on, go somewhere else, and let Tajay Spears take over the lead role in Tennessee. He's been actually kind of good this year. Under the radar, he's averaging smaller sample size, to be fair. It would drop if they give him more touches. 5.5 yards per carry, which is pretty darn crazy from that perspective. He has been a nice young piece. Now, there are trade odds out there on Derrick Henry. Buffalo Bills are your betting favorite because, of course, they are. The Chiefs at plus 250 I find curious since Isaiah Pacheco is pretty good. The Miami Dolphins are mandated to every and all back, which is whatever. The Cowboys, of course, they're on that list. Pittsburgh is weird because, you have Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. Love the Ravens at plus 900. Minnesota at plus 100 as well, which is curious, and the Bengals plus 1,000. Now, the top Henry trade fits, I believe, look more like this. I love the Ravens as a fit. I think that really stands out to me. I think the Bills are a decent fit if they want to try to lighten the workload on Josh Allen and make him play less hero chaos ball. I think the Browns are a sleeper team because the quarterback's a big issue, but they've got injuries in the backfield now too. Cowboys and Dolphins, you kind of got to mention. I might be surprised, though, if they made a trade. Not that many teams need a back in the end. So prediction time. Will the Titans end up trading away Derrick Henry? Y for yes, N for no. It is the pinned comment on this video. If that ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. We shall stay in Tennessee now with DeAndre Hopkins. Jason Canfora, who now writes for the Washington Post, and he says he talks to NFL GMs and executives, and I just don't know if I believe it. Or the ones he is talking to, NFL execs are no different than you and I to a certain extent. They got bad opinions too sometimes. He thinks there'd be major interest in DeAndre Hopkins. Now, remember, folks, there was very limited trade interest in Hopkins initially when the Cardinals cut him and the Titans signed him to a 2-year, $26 million deal. But he is due very little in salary. So because he's so cheap, because he's been solid for Tennessee, I do think you could get something for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think it's as much as alleged NFL GM says. Here's what Jason Canfora wrote for the Post. The big question is future Hall of Fame wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who got $9 million to sign, but carries a minimal salary. Would they pay $9 million for a second-round pick? Wonder GM1. Cleveland Titans could get that value in return with perhaps a smidgen more based on Hopkins' production with his new team, which I think refers to, a conditional pick going back to the Titans there. But that would be a second-round pick and change for DeAndre Hopkins, a player who nobody was willing to move a draft pick for, period, when he was cut by the Cardinals, which is really interesting. I have some more thoughts on this because this does not pass the smell test for me at all. We will get to those, but first, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks, the easiest and most fun way to play daily fantasy sports in North America. It is you against the numbers. You are not battling thousands of other players, the pros, the sharks, etc. You simply pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and then watch those winnings roll in. You can mix and match NFL, college football, NBA now back in the fold, MLB for a little bit longer as well. My Prize Picks week, I think I've hit 3 in a row now of the flex play. I'm taking the coward's way out moving forward because it's, tell you what, if there was an award for getting the most all but one picks right of Prize Picks and getting one leg short, I would be the winner. But that's why the flex play is so valuable. You just got to get 2 right to come out on top. Bryce Young, more than passing yards, breakout week. Travis Kelce, anytime TD, that one's pretty easy. And Trevor Lawrence, more than passing yards as well, because life's too short to take the less than. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Link will be in the comments section and the description. Again, folks, that's prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for that first deposit match up to $100. All right, back to Nuke Hopkins. There's no way what would be a rental of DeAndre Hopkins, or maybe a second year that's kind of expensive, honestly, is worth a second-round pick. Look, I get the trade market is a mess. You got Chase Claypool, draft swap along with Mecole Hardman. You got Chase Claypool originally going for a second back with the Bears. Cooks for a day 3 pick with the Cowboys in the offseason. There was no real trade interest in DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. There wasn't. Everyone's like, oh, Chiefs, Cowboys, blah, blah, blah. No one made a real offer for him. Cardinals ended up cutting him. They wouldn't have done that if they could find a real trade partner. And the real lack of free agency interest also shows how little interest there was in Hopkins. And this is a declining player. I'm sorry, he is. He's still good. Don't get me wrong. There is trade value associated with DeAndre Hopkins. But I'm staring down the barrel here of a guy with 376 yards in 6 games, trending towards maybe being a 1,000-yard receiver with the extra game. He misses a game, he does not get there. That's not a second-round pick player anymore. It's not in the modern-day NFL. I'm sorry. So what draft pick do you think DeAndre Hopkins is worth? Sound off for me in the comment section right now. Let's stick with receivers and go to Jerry Jeudy. Those Broncos trade rumors aren't going anywhere. And frankly, Jerry Jeudy has not lived up to the expectations that Denver's had for him. He can get open. He does that well for the most part, but inconsistency in both production and I think just the day-to-day stuff, that's why Denver's okay trading him, have not been his strong suits so far. Now, allegedly, the Denver Broncos wanted a first-round pick during the NFL draft. Obviously, no one said yes to that, and they're not going to get that now. Here's what ESPN's Jeremy Fowler suggested. Broncos wideout Jerry Jeudy's name has percolated for a while. That's always a fun verb, by the way. He will have suitors. Teams are torn on his worth, though, with multiple executives saying they couldn't justify a day 2 pick for Jeudy at this stage, though others said a third-round pick might suffice based on, a late third-rounder might suffice based on Jeudy's ability. You're banking on the upside, right? You're banking on Jeudy being an ascending player who was almost a 1,000-yard guy last year. Has not been that great this year. His numbers have declined. And I'll also point this out for Jeudy. The Fowler did not mention, but I think he mentioned it in another piece previously. There is money issues here too. Because guaranteed money-wise, he mentioned, Denver wants someone to eat this. Someone has to eat the Sutton contract. Jerry Jeudy's deal next year is fully guaranteed at over $10 million. It's a lot of money for a guy that's put up 286 yards so far this season with no touchdowns, by the way. It's all the upside pick with Jerry Jeudy compared to, say, Courtland Sutton. And so, look, Sutton's outplayed Jeudy so far this year. The money is more expensive this year, but overall, it's not that dissimilar. In fact, it's actually a little bit cheaper for Sutton over the next 2 years because you can get out of his deal with no more guaranteed money. It's a little bit more complicated than you might see looking at only the numbers this year. Judy's deal next year is a problem. Now, who is more likely to be moved? JJ for Jerry Jeudy or CS for Courtland Sutton? Let's go to the Commanders. Could they trade away Chase Young and or even maybe Montez Sweat? ESPN says, hey, they will listen to offers for both of those players, etc. It is very unlikely that the Commanders end up keeping both players next year. Both guys in the final years of their contract. They've paid Jonathan Allen. They've paid Deron Payne. It's tough to pay the market rate for two other edge rushers. Doesn't mean that would happen. Now, Josina Anderson tweeted this, and I'm going to condense it down because I don't always like Josina's tweets. They're very wordy and kind of get off topic. Teams have interest, basically, in Montez Sweat and Chase Young and willing to offer them a long-term deal, by the way. Now, I don't know what an identifiable team is. What, is there an unknown NFL team with actually 33 teams that we don't know about? Or are you saying there's interest, you're just not going to say which teams? I think it's the latter, but it feels like we're trying to use fancy words to sound smart. Anyway, money issues, pay issues for both these guys, right? Chase Young due 5.3 this year, did not pick up the fifth-year option. The prorated number ends up being like, 3-ish, somewhere in that range. Montez Sweat has more money. He's actually been a bit more productive than Chase Young. These are both former first-round picks who I think at minimum should be able to fetch you nothing worse than a fourth and probably at least a day 2 pick and probably multiple picks in the end. The issue here, and why I don't think they get dealt, outside of ownership stepping up and saying, do it, Ron Rivera, the Commanders should trade. That they are not a contender. They should sell. If whatever guy that they're not going to pay, trade the other one away. That's what they should do. But trading away one of your best young pieces probably means that Ron Rivera gets fired, and so does Martin Mayhew. And that does not bode well. They're not going to sacrifice their own job security so the next guy gets an extra third-round pick. So that's why you need a real GM. Unless ownership says, we're doing this, make the best deal that you can, I find it tough to see Ron Rivera and company selling at this year's trade deadline.